All right, at this time, we will call to order the City of Kenai Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for June 26th, 2024. And the first order of business, since our chair and vice chair are not in the building tonight, we need to nominate a pro tem chairperson. Commissioner Petty.
Yes, I would like to nominate Jeff Twait as our pro tem for this evening.
Second.
Any discussion?
I would like to request unanimous consent.
All right, unanimous consent's requested. Any objections? All right, seeing none, we will move on with the meeting. Will you please stand, if you can, for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, item 8.2, roll call, please.
Right. Chair Halstead is absent tonight. Commissioner Petty?
Present.
Commissioner Fikes?
Here.
Commissioner Barboza?
Present.
Vice Chair Costin? All right, I see Vice Chair Costin is present online. At this time, we're having some audio issues, but he is present. Commissioner Woodard?
Here.
And Chair Pro Tem Twait?
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to item A3. Before we approve the agenda and consent agenda, I just wanted to make sure everybody is aware of the two laydown items. We'll add item B1, which is the approval of the minutes, and an item added to F1 for public hearing, Resolution PZ 2024-16. And with that, is there someone that would make a motion to approve the agenda, consent agenda with the laydowns? Commissioner Petty?
Yes, I'd like to approve the agenda and the consent agenda and the laydowns as presented.
A second.
Second. All right. Could the clerk please read the consent agenda into the record?
You have approval of minutes, regular meeting of June 12, 2024, and new business action approval requesting an excused absence for the June 12, 2024 regular meeting from Commissioner Barboza, and that is your consent agenda.
All right. Is there anyone that would like to speak to any of the items that were on the consent agenda just read? Seeing none, I would ask for approval of the agenda and consent agenda. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the agenda and consent agenda are approved. Takes us down to item C, scheduled public comment. We have none. Item D is unscheduled public comment. Anyone wishing to come forward and speak to any of the items not on tonight's agenda?
And if there is anyone on Zoom who would like to speak to an item not on the agenda, you may raise your hand at this time.
All right, we look good. We will then move on to item E, consideration of plats. We have one item tonight, Resolution PZ 2024-15, recommending approval on a preliminary plat, Beaver Loop Acres, Addition Number 2 replat for the replat of Tract A and Lot 2 of the Beaver Loop Acres subdivision within the rural residential zoning district. Can I get a motion, please? Commissioner Woodard.
Excuse me. I move that we, I forgot what to say.
Approve.
We move that we approve Resolution PZ 2024-15, recommending approval of the preliminary plat, Beaver Loop Acres, additional number 2 replat for the replat of Tract A and Lot 2 of Beaver Loop Acres subdivision with the rural residential zoning district.
I'll second that.
Second. All right. Staff report.
My apologies. Thank you, Chair Pro Tem Twait. So for this preliminary plat, I'm going to defer it to our planning technician, Brennan, to present this preliminary plat. Thank you.
Pro Temp Chair Twait, Commissioners, members of the public, thank you very much. This is a preliminary plat. me here. There we go. This is a preliminary plat to move the north lot line of Lot 2 east about 50 feet. That's the little guy down here on the bottom left-hand corner, as well as dedicate pit access road as access into the gravel pit and South Baker Street and West Cone Avenue for future access. That's there, a little bit ahead of myself, sorry. I'm going to pause right here and say that this may look familiar to some of you, and that is because a similar preliminary plat was, under the same name, was recommended for approval by your commission back in 2020, but approval of this preliminary plat will void the previous resolution. And so the current use of the big, this one might work a little bit. Of the big chunk there is a gravel pit owned by Beaver Loop Sand and Gravel. And the little lot that's going to change hands, Frank and Barbara Williams, was residential. I'm going to skip right into the next here. When it comes to preliminary plats, there are 4 standards to be met. The first one being design standards. Preliminary plat for the replat, subject to the listed conditions, conforms to minimum street widths, utilities and access easements, as well as satisfactory building sites, and on-site water and wastewater systems will be subject to requirements of Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation. The next standard is a minimum improvements. The replat is an existing subdivision of a previous subdivision, that has met right-of-way conditions and access conditions requirements, so no installation agreement is required. Standard number 3, minimum lot area requirements in a rural residential zoning. The minimum lot size is 20,000 square feet, and these lots are well above that. And general requirements, the preliminary plat meets city standards for lot width, depth, access, and utility easements. Compliance with lot coverage, setbacks, and building height will be reviewed during the building permit review. All that being said, which staff recommendation is to adopt resolution PZ 2024-15, recommending approval of resolution PZ 2024-15 for a replat of tract A1, Beaver Loop Acres Addition Number 1, and Lot 2, Beaver Loop Acres Subdivision. That concludes staff's presentation.
All right, thank you. At this time, we will open it up for public testimony. Anyone wishing to speak to Resolution PZ 2024-15? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission for any discussion. Anyone have any comments or discussion? Going once. Okay. All right, we'll call for the roll then, please.
Vice Chair Costin, if we are unable to hear you, you may type your vote into the chat and I will read it at the end of the roll call. Commissioner Petty?
Yes.
Commissioner Barboza?
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard?
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Twait?
Yes.
Commissioner Fikes?
Yes.
I'm just going to wait one moment to see if Vice Chair Costin's vote pops up here in the chat. I'm not seeing a chat here, so the motion passes.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll move on to item F, public hearings. F1 is Resolution PZ 2024-16, granting a conditional use permit to operate administrative offices within the existing building on the property described as Lot 1A, vacation and replat Rasmussen subdivision located at 1311 Kiana Lane within the suburban residential zoning district. Commissioner Barbosa.
I would like to declare a conflict of interest on this agenda item.
Could you explain, please?
My employer is going to be the occupant of the building.
Okay. I guess we want to either, we can either rule from the chair or take discussion on that, or do we just rule from the chair?
Conflict of interest, the chair would rule on that.
Okay. Probably that, I don't know that it would be any financial gain on your part, or could be, do you think? No? All right, well then I don't necessarily see that you couldn't be impartial and rule out, or and be involved in this, so I would declare that there is no conflict. So, that being said, we have the motion, or we have the item read. We can go ahead and get a motion, please.
Chairman Twait, can I ask for a 5-minute at ease?
Certainly can. All right, I'm going to change my mind, I guess, then, and we will actually have Commissioner Barbosa stay out of this one then, just to avoid any appearance of conflict. So we will, and I think she's okay to stay up here, right? She doesn't have to go sit down, or does she need to?
It's standard practice typically when there's a conflict of interest and they're recused to take a seat in the audience.
Okay. All right. And that being said, now I would entertain a motion, please. Commissioner Fikes.
I'd like to make a motion for approval of Resolution PZ 2024-15. 16, granting a conditional use permit to operate administrative offices within the existing building on the property described as 1311 Kiana Lane.
I'd second that.
Staff report, please.
Thank you, Chair Pro Tem Twait and Commissioners and member of the public. So before you is a conditional use permit to utilize that existing building as an administrative office located at 1311 Kiana Lane. You know, the most recent and current use that staff is aware of is it was utilized as a single-family dwelling. However, noted in the staff report, there wasn't any building permit to indicate that it was legally converted, but it's not to acknowledge what the current use was. Zoning is suburban residential RS. However, the comp plan, the comprehensive plan, has a land use designation as institutional for that lot only within the area. Lot size is approximately 1 acre. So surrounding uses right now, to the north you have a vacant lot, and then everywhere else to the west, east, and south, you have residential use, primarily single-family dwelling. You know, I want to give a little background about this site, you know, and thank you for those who submitted public comments to indicate, you know, staff typically look at records that we have in place. And so I did realize, looking at more recent history, that back, I think it was 2016 to 2019, this was White Crane Academy, martial art yoga studio. So as a reminder, those kind of uses, you have more visitors coming in and out. And so, as noted in the staff report, staff finds that with these prior uses at this location and knowing that our comp plan envisions that this property site is to be institutional, staff does find it meets the criteria that this is an appropriate use. And again, this is strictly limited to administrative offices. While it's indicated on the application by the applicant that maybe in the future they want, you know, a youth center, multi-purpose room, that would have to come back to your commission for consideration if they wanted to expand that use. So I just want to make it very clear, this CUP is limited to administrative office at this location within the building. Again, if they want to expand that use for youth center, multi-recreational use, daycare, they would have to come back and go through this public hearing again. And so I just wanted to show that, you know, the last use that we were acknowledged commercial use was this yoga martial arts studio that was here for 3 years up until 2019. And staff did verify their business license, which expired at that time. You can see in the staff report their site plan is really their most recent survey that they've done. You can see that the lot itself with the existing building, the lot has plenty of parking to accommodate administrative office. And as a reminder, when it comes to a conditional use permit, there are really 5 criteria that we look at in order for your commission to approve, and all 5 must be met in order for approval. So the first being the use is consistent with the purpose of the zoning district, which is suburban residential. Suburban residential, yes, primarily residential, but within the land use table, there are certain uses that are allowed subject to a conditional use permit. In this case, professional office, even though this is not a government building, would act similar to it, is also a conditional use permit. And this is why it's being brought before you as a conditional use. So the zoning itself would allow it subject to meeting these criteria. And then criteria 2 is the economic and non-economic value. So surrounding neighborhood use consists primarily of mixed single-family, multifamily within the corridor, and as mentioned previously, there's been several uses that was primarily started with institutional and then went to commercial in the sense of a studio, yoga studio, martial arts studio. And then within the last, probably since 2019, I don't know when it was converted to a single family, that has been the more recent use. The administrative office is being proposed to operate between Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And the only occasional visitors who aren't going to be working at the premise would be those who come to do enrollment. So that is how they're hoping to operate this building site, is for their staff only and with the occasional visitors to do enrollment. Staff finds that the hours of operations are reasonable and really compatible because it's Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And it has a very low-key, I don't know how many people are going to be doing enrollment on site. I would ask the applicant that question, how many visitors if there's online enrollment. And then furthermore, when it comes to offices, we have seen in corridors where offices are allowed in residential, but it's subject to obviously seeing where that exists within a neighborhood. Typically, I would say from a planning that in a corridor like this, maybe an office is not appropriate, but our comp plan designated as institution. So our comp plan envisioned that this would remain as an institutional use. And so if staff finds that it's consistent with the third criteria for this reason. The institutional use, and I'm going to read it verbatim, within the comp plan as a land use designation is intended to provide an area in which government and tax-exempt institutions can offer social, cultural amenities to the citizen of the community, but its also primary use is public, nonprofit, quasi-public uses, including government offices and facility in schools, churches, and other community service-oriented facilities. So staff finds that this proposed use is consistent with the comp plan designation. Fourth criteria, public service and facilities are adequate. This site has the service connections, and staff doesn't find that this would impede or require additional, since they have access to city water, sewer, natural gas, electricity, and so forth. They have access also for access to the property from Kiana and Baker Street. Both are paved roads and maintained by the city. And then in terms of their required parking space, they only require 12 parking space for this building, and they have a surplus of parking on the site where 60 parking spaces are provided. And so staff finds that criteria 4 is met. I do want to elaborate a little bit more of the comments that have been provided or submitted to the city in your laydown, and we'll hear testimonies here. I did go on site before this. Baker Street, at the intersection of Baker Street and where it hits Kiana Lane, there is a stop sign. And then when you're heading down Kiana Lane, there is another sign that says dead end. So if there is concern about traffic and pedestrian safety, it would be up to your commission as some conditions, and I talked to the Public Works Director of putting signage of children at play or potentially adding another stop sign at Kiana intersection. You know, these are some options that the Public Works Director could put up additional signs if needed to meet these criteria. I want to put that on your radar as options for consideration. And then criteria 5, in terms of harmful to the public safety, health, and welfare, we already talked about criteria 4. Public services are available to adequately serve the administration offices. And based on the overall site layout, you can see where the landscape buffers are located. They're primarily to the west of the property line. It's at least 15 feet. It meets our site plan and landscape criteria. And furthermore, there's that buffer along Kiana Lane. And the property to the west is a detached garage. And furthermore, it leads down a driveway to the house to northwest of this property. I think the challenge here is this plat in the 80s vacated a right-of-way that would have run on the east side. If you, and I'm going to go back to a little bit of the existing site. So around here, back in the late 80s, it was replatted, and there would have been a right-of-way continuing down Baker all the way through here, but it was vacated. And so even if they replatted, I don't see that the city would require it, because we kind of set precedence when it was replatted and vacated that. And however, I do see that potentially the access may be impacting this property to the east in terms of their access. This lot itself has 2 access, kind of a U shape here, in and out. And so typically most lots with this street frontage usually has 1 in and 1 out. And staff find that that can kind of mitigate the traffic as well, that it's not 1 lane in and 1 lane out. And so as mentioned before, your landscape primarily is here to the west, and furthermore, they meet the landscaping requirements to the front, and staff is requesting that your commission add those conditions for, I think, 3 and 4, as noted in your resolutions, to be consistent with our landscape and site plan, and that being, I'm going to read it verbatim. Condition number 3 says, provide a minimum in width equal to the setbacks along all property lines in terms of landscaping, except where there are driveways and other egress. And then maintain the natural screenings to adequately shield vehicular or building lights onto neighboring residential use, or otherwise provide a combination of shrubberies and trees and or a minimum of a 6-foot-high solid fence or wall. Staff is making those recommendations because we recognize how close it is to the residential, and this is a way to mitigate it to meet condition 5. So other than that, these are the conditions. Staff does not find that additional conditions other than 1 through 4 are necessary to approve this CUP, and staff is recommending your commission to approve this resolution for administrative office within the existing building. So just a reminder, if they were to expand, they would have to come back to your commission, go through the public process again, because once there is an expansion, could further impact the neighborhood, and it needs to be reevaluated. And that concludes staff's presentation, and I know there's many members here who are here to provide comments, and I hope the applicants here as well, or their representative.
All right, thank you. At this time, if there is somebody who represents or is the applicant, it's your time to come up and do a little presentation and maybe cover anything that the planning director didn't. State your name and there you go. Go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner Twait.
How you doing?
Good, good. I'm sorry to have my back turned to, my potential new neighbors, so if you don't mind, if I move the mic here, is that okay? All right, I don't want to be rude. My name is Chris Munfer. I'm the president and CEO of Salamanoff Native Association, located at 230 Main Street Loop in Kenai, Alaska. We are the applicant to purchase the building on Kiana Lane with the intent to occupy with the Salamanoff tribe, which is a separate organization than Salamanoff Natives Association, the tribal administrative offices out of that location. As was so well put together, thank you very much, staff, that put together the presentation on the hours of operation, the intent of usage, the understanding that as we grow into the place, if we would like to expand our social services to include youth classes, elder gathering places, that we would have to apply for the appropriate permits. The reason we chose Kiana Lane was simple. We wanted to stay in the Kenai area. We didn't want to go to Soldotna. We love Kenai. We take our youth and we volunteer time with Parks and Rec to paint the benches and spend time beautifying our city. We like to be good neighbors, and I'm very sorry that we weren't able to get you guys a little better explanation before getting a call out here to ask us, why are you moving here? Well, really the building fits our needs perfectly. It has a wonderful space for administrative offices. We are a very small group. I think I have a few other members here that can speak, but I think we have probably a total of maybe 10 staff, if that. And it allows the space to spread out. There's a men's and women's bathroom in the place. There's a large kitchen in there. There's an area for seating. As we will apply for the appropriate permits, we'll be able to hold some youth classes and some cultural classes in that big area where they did the yoga and the martial arts. So the intention here is not to come in and be a bad neighbor. Our intention is to come in here and probably be one of the better neighbors that that you will have, because you're going to have a group that, if you're not familiar with us, is very community oriented, very family oriented, very people oriented. And once again, I want to apologize to the neighbors that we didn't get a letter out to you. Honestly, we thought this was a bit more of a formality for the permitting process. We weren't quite sure that it would fit in that parameter of what we wanted to do with the uses, and that's why we made the contingent offer. Chairman, if there's any questions from you or the body, I know I only have 3 minutes, but I beg to ask, and I do have our executive director here from the tribe, as well as the chairman of the board from Salamanoff Native Association, prepared to speak if needed, if I'm not allowed more time.
You can keep going.
Okay. So with that, other than the nuts and bolts, which staff had talked about, what questions do you have that I can answer? I mean, from either the Planning and Zoning Commission or the body.
So that will direct this way, and then if they have comments or questions, we'll kind of reroute it, but we want to direct everything that way as far as that goes. So,
Okay.
So I guess at this point, yep, Commissioner Fikes.
Yeah, through the chair. So you stated that your old location is 230 Main Street?
No, ma'am. My location, Salamanoff Natives Association, is 230 Main Street Loop. We've been there for almost 20 years. We also own 110 North Willow next door, which is an administrative building that we have rented out for offices, which the tribe is currently renting from us. So it's a different organization that it will occupy. So we have no intention, as Salamanoff Native Association, of occupying that property.
Okay, so you're not currently at, I got confused there, I'm sorry. You're not at 230? That's a
I
different.
am at 230 Main Street
Okay,
Loop.
yeah. So that's where I was going with my question. Are you the only occupant at that location, or is there other facilities?
At 230 Main Street Loop, yes, I am the only occupant at that facility.
Okay, and so if you go to your new location, something else will happen to that building? or-
I am not going to a new location. We are purchasing the Kiana Lane building for the Salamanoff tribe, which is an entirely different organization.
Gotcha. Thank you. It's been
You're
a long
welcome.
night. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Momfer? All right. Well, you did a good job then.
Thank you.
That doesn't mean we won't have something that.
If something comes up, I'm available
Absolutely.
to come up
Yep.
and
Yep.
answer, to the best of my knowledge.
Yep.
So thank you. Thanks.
All right. And then I guess if there's any other people, if you would like to come up, absolutely, you can answer the things that he forgot to talk about, maybe. And again, if you can state your name for the record, please.
It's red, though.
It's good to go now.
Eric Morrison, I'm the director for the Salamantoff tribe, and we will be the tenants and the occupants of the building. So I just wanted to make a comment that I do believe that we fit within the mold of the directions that the institution mode is fitting, in that we're going to be we will have social and cultural services to the community. When we talked about enrollment, that's just a small factor of our organization and what we do. In order for a member to be person to be a member of our tribe, they have to follow and be adopted by our elders, recommended by our elders, in which case they embrace our culture and traditions of the tribe in the community. And embracing the tribe, they have to recognize as well that we serve the community in many ways. We provide services for the homeless. We work with the youth in teaching them pride and culture and health. We provide services for the elders. And we teach culture as well, our traditional culture, in preparing foods, medicines, fish, moose to our youth. And the resources that we develop are given to our elders. And we have important activities, like we teach our kids NYO as a recreational activity, and we participate statewide in competition. And our team is not restricted just to our tribal members. Anyone who wants to learn Native culture and have their kids participate in our Native culture are encouraged to attend. So that's about all I'd have. If you have any questions, I certainly encourage it.
All right, we'll see. Oh, Commissioner Fikes.
In addition to the administrative offices, it sounded like you have a very small staff. Do you anticipate, since it's going to be an expansion of your, what you are currently using, do you anticipate any kind of storage? I mean, it's a really big building, it's a really big parking lot. Is that something that maybe you might have buses or extra vehicles or anything like that?
Yeah, exactly. We're hoping to grow.
Can I get you to turn your button? Can I get you to turn your button back on again?
Someone turn. Did you turn it off? Right. What we're hoping to do is to grow. We're the newest tribe in Alaska. Although we were recognized in the 70s, we didn't actually become organized and operate until 2018. So we're pretty new, but we're up and running. We're trying to get very involved. For example, natural resources. We want to work with the city here and with the borough on improving the fishery resources, pathways, those sort of things. Work with the forests. Obviously, there's some health issues there that we're hoping to work with the borough and the cities on improving. So those sort of things. So with that, we will be growing. We're hoping to grow.
So I understand you also have some firefighters on the peninsula. Is that true?
Yeah, they're employed by the corporation.
Oh, okay, that was kind of where I was going with that. I was wondering if that was going to be additional storage, if you'd see extra vehicles and that kind of thing. So in addition to the office.
Yeah,
would
they
that be-
won't be there.
Okay, okay,
All right.
thanks.
Anyone else? Commissioner Petty.
Thank you. Oh, one more.
Mr. Morrison, I wanted to thank you for bringing the extra details to this and how you collaborate with your community and facilitate the culture with the food and medicine and fishery. And anyway, I just graciously appreciate you sharing that with us, and so that we have a greater understanding, and that was very helpful. Thank you, sir.
Anyone else? All right, thank you. All right, anyone else wishing? We'll open it up now to anyone that would like to come up and testify to PZ 2024-16. And again, turn the button on and state your name for the record, please.
Great. My name's Brad Brown. I live at 306 Baker Street. I've lived there for the last 9 years. I have a number of concerns with the proposed changes with this conditional use permit. First, and I brought this up at City Council before, we received, most of this street received no notification, despite the fact that I have 2 properties inside the 300-foot radius of this change. So I'm not sure what it is about getting notifications, but I don't seem to get them. That's a frustration there. Second, I have some heartburn, I guess, about the way the permit's written. There's inconsistencies with what's presented tonight. It talks about future expansion, other use cases, above and beyond administrative offices. So if we could just get a really clear definition, maybe in writing, of what exactly is being approved, that would be appreciated. Third, I was looking up the definitions of these things and saw the suburban residential zone type prohibits uses which would violate the residential character of the environment and generate heavy traffic in predominantly residential areas. This is most definitely a residential area. I think this violates the use of that. I understand it's institutional for this specific lot, but all of the area around it being residential, as we saw. I'm particularly concerned about the level of traffic, specifically along Kiana Lane. If you care to see it, I have a map that illustrates there's 18 houses that are affected by the traffic on Kiana Lane. So it's basically all of Kiana Lane there for that block, and then Baker Street for that block. There's 18 houses on there. With that said, 9 of those 18 houses have children living in them. And for better or worse, they play in the street. So traffic's already a concern there. Additionally, the city has yet to enforce its street parking restriction ordinance in the winter. And so there's multiple violators of that along Kiana Street or Lane there. And it results in Kiana Lane turning into one lane from a few hundred feet of the street for most of the winter. So traffic is most definitely a consideration there. But in summary, I guess I would just ask that you consider the impact of essentially the traffic on the neighborhood, and then also the plans for future expansion, which mean more traffic, more noise, more buildings. So, thank you.
Look at that, perfect timing. Commissioner Fikes, you got a question?
So as a long-term resident, you say you've been there 9 years. During that time, what was your experience while the facility was being utilized as a yoga studio and other, I guess there was other teaching, Jehovah Witnesses
MMA,
and church?
And then
Yeah.
mixed martial arts too, yeah.
Yeah, so thank you for the question. My understanding is it hasn't been a church for more than 11 years. I was unaware it was a yoga studio, even while I was living there. Just learned that tonight. So clearly that wasn't very busy. I was aware that it was the White Crane Academy, and they certainly had people stop by there. They were all very respectful. It was usually about 6 vehicles present, so somewhat smaller than this. I saw in the staff report, I feel like the property was a little bit mischaracterized. It said it has been a church, school, and auditorium. That was puzzling to me. I understand it was a church. Looking into the borough classification of it, it says it was a Sunday school, which I believe because it was a church. And then I don't think anyone would consider it to be an auditorium. So I thought that was a little strange, but maybe that's my lack of understanding.
All right, and if I can, before we go any further, is there any way we can pull the maps back up so we can maybe see if it encompasses his property and we can identify where you're at exactly?
Sure.
Be helpful, I think. So, and then in the meantime, Commissioner Fikes, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just follow up on that. It was my understanding that there was martial arts as well, and there was an auditorium during that time of the yoga and the martial arts. There were some other functions that were taking place at that location with that previous owner.
All right, so we're going to zoom in here. If you can, see if we can identify, locate, you can, that's you?
Yep.
Okay.
Both of those properties.
Did you notice if anything was posted outside that facility to indicate that there was going to be a hearing tonight?
Yes, there was a yellow sign that was placed for at least 2 weeks.
Oh.
Chair Pro Tem, may I speak on it?
You certainly can.
So the way our noticing gets done is based on the boroughs, and so it looks like that property, you chose to hide your information, and that is why you weren't notified, because I see a blank on the list. So that's the downside, is because our code says we refer back to the borough's GIS map, and we extract that, because I have the spreadsheet of all the addresses, and I'm happy to share, because everything we do is public record. And so we send out the notices, and as you can see, because when you go to the borough, your site right there has a dash, and that is why you probably don't get notices for that reason. But maybe, yes, please.
Could we consider changing that to send it to the resident of that address? I mean, that makes sense to me. Just because you don't know my name doesn't mean you don't know my address, right?
So I'm going to be, yes, that would have to be a code change into the way notification is, because, and I've done it in other cities I work for, we send it twice. We send it to what's registered on the assessors, but we also send it to the actual physical address to ensure. So yes, I agree with you. That would be a way, if you're choosing to hide it on the GIS, the borough's assessing office, but that would be a code change that council would have to approve.
To me, it seems a logical change, since this could impact renters at other rented locations. So there's a triplex and a duplex on that street, and they might want notification of it.
No,
All those people
trust
would
me,
be-
I'm a huge advocate for notifying the public. If I can have more resources and figure out, this is why most of the time I speak with the audience, is figuring out how did you hear about it? And we are in the process of looking at better ways to improve. And I will speak on it briefly, that one of the changes with the Clarion potentially going, like reducing their ads, I'm proposing as a mechanism is to do early notification as well. Instead of hearing it 10 days before, sending it right when it's deemed complete, so that you have a chance to plan around, right? Most people get it last minute and they're like, I just got your postcard. How am I supposed to plan about this? So I hear you, Brad. I was there when you came to council.
And if I could, since Director Mitchell's queued up, maybe if you want to address his concern about what he thought or thinks the application covers and what it doesn't. I mean, I think I understood it, that it's very narrow scope is what this administrative thing is, and then, but just being, just putting it out there that there could be expansion, and that is something maybe down the road. But I think it's narrow for the administrative building, correct?
Thank you, Chair Pro Tem Twait. Correct. So as listed on their application, they mention those future uses, but in my staff report, I mention it because I don't want to ignore what was potentially proposed either. I want to give everything out there. But again, this CUP is strictly for administrative offices only. If they choose to expand that use beyond office use, they would have to reapply for a new CUP to add on that additional use. And the resolution says administrative office only. Otherwise, it would say administrative office, expansion of other additional uses.
Yeah, go ahead.
I am curious with that. I did notice that, and I assumed that was the case. However, with my lack of knowledge in this area, how often are you turning down permit applications for expansion when people already have money invested in the property and they own it? I get that's my concern. At some point, I feel like the tribe will be pot committed, if you will, to that property. And it's either sink or swim to expand or not for them. And I'm sensitive to that too. Like, they have investment in it, right? So it's like, hey, let's get in front of this. They clearly, their intentions are to expand. I understand that's not in the scope of this permit, but that's where they want to go. And that's really what I want to resist, is more traffic and more people right next to my house. So I guess I'm curious, how often is, if you can quantify that or ever, or not, I guess, do you ever turn down people on increased expansion?
I would say it does happen, and sometimes it doesn't just, it's not black and white. Sometimes it may be that we zoom in on the conditions of it and limit the scope and limit the hours of operation, things of that nature that can help out the surrounding property owners. So it does happen for sure. It's not just a rubber stamp that if once they, and they know that going into that, they're hedging a little bit that whatever their plans are in the future, they know they got to come back and present their case. So I don't know if Director Mitchell would like to add anything more to that.
Brad, and thank you through the chair, it goes back to those criteria. It's very clear a CUP can only be approved as long as those all criteria are met. So yes, they invested in this and this is where I changed verbiage. In the past, it would just be generic. This whole site can have this use. It doesn't say strictly to this building. And so this use of office is within that existing building. If they come back and expand more and build more, they would have to come back because now the impact is greater. And then again, now we're adding additional use, generating more traffic, then we get the opportunity to reevaluate that additional use. So this is where my language is very clear of administrative office within the existing building. Doesn't mean they can do administrative office and build another building with administrative office. It is strictly to this existing building.
And that's fair, and I understand that. I guess it feels like if this doesn't go my way now as a resident nearby, it's just all inevitable, is what it feels like. But
So I have a question for you. So if I'm tracking this correctly, the traffic to this application doesn't necessarily have to go by your house, if I'm seeing that correctly, right?
correct.
Okay, so yeah, I was just wondering, so it's going to come down off of what, Candlelight or whatever that is, I'm guessing. And
Yeah, I also have a map that kind of matches.
Okay.
So, in my estimations of things, the streets in red, which would be Kiana and Baker Street, those are the streets impacted because that is what is taken by the residents.
Okay.
So,
Okay, thanks. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
thank you.
Oh, hang on. Whoop.
Just for some information on your part, in the wintertime, if there are oftentimes complaints can be lodged with the city manager for illegal parking situations, and they would be happy to resolve that. Just to share that information with you for future references.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Yep, please come forward. And again, if you can state your name for the record and turn the red button on. There you go. All right.
Hello, I'm Raymond Hanson, and I live at 309 Baker. And I guess I want to talk about a couple things, even though they may have occurred earlier. I mean, not being addressed in this, but I do like some of the things that Brad said also about use and their identified use of the facility. And it sounds like they already have plans to expand. And that isn't identified in your permit application that I'm aware of. Because I came in and talked to your planning department today, and they talked about only administrative uses. At any rate, so the use that has been identified for this public hearing seems like it could be more specific. It was a church before, and then they got together with the landowner that is adjacent to their property, and they said, I don't know what all occurred, but they wanted to vacate all the public access there and the right-of-way is basically what I'm saying. But that is a traditional use access also. That is, a trail where people have traveled in the past. And so it's a little disappointing when that property went up and was identified, as they were going to vacate that right away. Then, I used to go over there and bike all over the place down that street, and then we'd get access to go down and look at the lake over there. And so as soon as that went through, then I still took kids over there, and we'd be going around the big block, and then we'd take a little loop up through that parking lot. And I don't know if there's, I can see the trail and all that, but, I don't know if that's what you guys are doing as far as traditional maintaining of those trails. It went all the way from the road, Kenai Spur, back to the golf course. And now there's getting to be houses along that whole road. Let's see. So they went and then they threw up a stop sign at the end of my road. I'm on Baker, and said that I had to stop for everybody that's coming out of that church. And I used to, well...
Careful now.
I don't know if we need a stop sign. Is that something that you would address as a part of this whole issue? Like, get rid of the stop sign on my street, or put stop signs all over the place?
That is out of our control.
Whose control?
That would be Kenai Police Department probably, and Public Works.
Who's talking?
That was me.
Oh, very good.
So, through the chair, Yes, Public Works is the one who puts street signs, stop signs within the city limit, mostly if it's a right-of-way maintained by the city. So it would be a Public Works director who puts a sign there or remove it. Unless this is going to be a condition of the CUP to add additional signage, it could be. But if you're looking to remove it, it would be a discussion with the Public Works department.
Are you going to review it as a part of this conditional use permit or not?
The stop sign at Baker in that intersection? No. I will bring it to the attention of the Public Works Director, and I'm happy to give you his contact number for you to discuss with him. But that's not the subject matter in terms of the CUP, whether this use, if it's found that this stop sign is needed or not. It's there. I don't see why removing it would help the traffic to this. If we're concerned about pedestrian safety, a stop sign would at least slow down the vehicle in this intersection.
Can I get you to push the red button again, too? It's just easier to keep track of things. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to be addressed again, and yeah, maybe I have to go talk to someone else, but I think it could be addressed at the same time as everything else is being addressed. Conditional use permit, it doesn't seem to, that seems like it could be put on any kind of permit and say that it's conditional. And so it's nice to make it clear what you're asking for and your real intent to expand in the future at that site. I don't know. Yeah. So I think that's all I want to tell you about.
All right. We'll see if anyone has any questions for you. I guess you're good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I think Brad took the heat.
It's good to have neighbors, huh? All right. Anyone else wishing to come forward and testify to PZ 2024-16?
All right, on Zoom, I see we have Paula Carlisle with her hand up. I'm going to go ahead and ask you to unmute at this time.
Hello?
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
We can. You can go ahead and start your testimony.
Paula, it looks like you're trying to speak, but we cannot hear you. We did hear you when you first came on.
I'll tell you what, we'll see if we can work that out. In the meantime, we'll go back here and see if there's anybody in the building that would like to testify. And if not, I think we may have ginned up a question or two that maybe somebody from the one of the applicants could come forward and speak to. Maybe a question or two.
Yes, sir. Chris Munfer, Salamanoff Native Association.
All right. First of all, I'm going to see if anyone else has any questions. It looks like maybe they are good. So I just want to speak to some of the questions regarding this potential future expansion. Do you think that, just to maybe let the public have a little bit of idea, would those be typically, do you think, expansions within the building that's there, or would you think you'd be adding more buildings to the property?
Thank you for the question, sir. Initially, the expansion would be to the existing building where we would have like elders come in, and there's a beautiful kitchen there that we could, meet and prepare meals, sit and tell stories. The auditorium area that is in the main area there with the stage would be a perfect spot for us to come in and put on some arts and crafts and some traditional makings of the native culture here. Additionally, the expansions outside of that, I think that's way down the road, and obviously throughout the process, first is to get our administrative people in a building that's comfortable, that they're all under one roof. We have them pieced out through the city of Kenai and a couple other buildings. I mentioned earlier about our forestry and fire division. That is an entirely separate organization that is not in the tribe and is actually located back near Frogberry off of Spirit Lake. So we're quite a ways away from there. Additionally, the operating company that is known as BMGC is located off of the escape route in North Kenai on a parcel out there. So, it's not going to have intermingling traffic of businesses. It is going to be strictly administrative at the beginning for the Salamana tribal people. As far as people coming in for enrollment, lining up where to go get their social services, yes, there will be some traffic there on that. How much? It's not going to be any more than if you're having a barbecue, on a Sunday. I don't think that we're going to have more than 1 to 2 cars a day, if that. The expansion, though, you're absolutely right. We do have plans from that, and the plans would be, to hold more community type events that would be inclusive of everybody, especially children, especially our youth. As you guys are well aware, we contribute enormously to this community. We support the Boys and Girls Club financially. We have our own foundation that is centered towards the betterment of youth of the Kenai. We have youth programs where we hire people for 16 and older to come mow lawns that, honestly, we just want to teach them a sense of work and pride and how to be a good community member. As far as being a neighbor, we're going to be the ones that look out for your stuff. And if anybody that wants to come by my places, I'm not a junky person, and my organization isn't either. We like neat, we like clean. We don't like gathering things. There's, one of the things that we pride ourselves in is teaching our youth how to behave in a socially responsible manner within our society while promoting our own pride of who we are. And I would love to share that, especially with the neighbors. And again, I apologize that we didn't get out in front of this, as we should have. If there's any more questions.
No. I think that, like I said, I just wanted to, and it's really has nothing to do with this application, but I just kind of wanted to get a feel of that. And then, like I said, I think if this application goes forward, then, it certainly gives you time to work within this community a little bit, like you said, to kind of show them what you're about if they don't necessarily know all of it. And when that expansion time comes, maybe the buy-in and community support will be there then, a little bit different. So I appreciate that. Thank you. I don't know if anyone else has anything. I think we're good. All right. Did we have any luck online again?
Paula Carlisle, I see that you are still unmuted. Would you like to try speaking again, and I'll let you know if we're able to hear you? I'm sorry, Ms. Carlisle, there's no audio output coming for you on our end.
All right. Well, we did have a couple people walk in, so I don't know if they still want to testify to, this is the conditional use permit, PZ 2024-16?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you want to come forward?
If I may.
Yep, and push the little red button on and state your name for the record, please.
This one? Oh, there we go.
You go.
Tim Davenport. And thank you, commissioners, for taking my testimony. Frankly, we did get the notice. We were aware of this for a short while. We were actually in Kasilof when this meeting started, and we've been curious. We had no idea what was coming. And frankly, I'm the guy with the most to lose. So we are the people immediately northwest of this building. We share the driveway, and their parking lot is essentially in our front yard. We got online. We were listening to this on the phone, open-minded. What kind of building is this going to be? What kind of services is this going to be? And once the testimony started coming out, frankly, I hit the gas, and here I am. Because I wasn't going to testify, but I think especially after hearing Mr. Brown's testimony and a bit of the, I don't want to call it a misrepresentation, but a bit of the stretch over these 5 factors that we've gone through, I felt like I had to come in here and I had to say something. So in my house, there are 6 of us. We share a driveway, and I have 5 children in my home. Across from us is Flavio Chavez. He has 6 people in his home, children also. Anything coming into this home, any traffic coming into this business comes directly through just a plethora of kids out there playing all day, every day, including homeschool kids who are literally out there all day, every day. It's my understanding right now, Jim, I believe his name is Jim, who owns the home. He did, John? Yeah, he did have a yoga studio in there. Wife was running a yoga studio. He was doing like a taekwondo thing, but it was never really a large commercial use at all. And I'm pretty sure they were living in there at the same time. No different than maybe like my wife when she used to run yoga out of the living room. So not a commercial use at all. This is a residential home. It's been a residential home for a long time. We've only been in the neighborhood about 3 years, but my understanding of the history of this place is it was a church quite a long time ago, and then a school, but that was back when this was all predominantly like a Jehovah's Witness community, and they were all family, friends, and part of this similar community, and that was vacated and left behind years and years ago. So this has been predominantly a single, well, I think they've got multiple families in there, some kids in there now, but a single family use. There's been no commercial use in this building. Baker Street is literally a trail. There's one driveway out to Baker Street, and I think Kathy actually, they would essentially be using Kathy's driveway as an access for this building because she shares that Baker Street driveway with her. I think it's...
So while you are looking at the map, so just put your finger on where you're at just so we're familiar. Okay, yep.
That's my front yard. So my front yard, I share a fence line with this parking lot. And while there's certainly parking for 12, it's a pretty torn up piece of asphalt that frankly needs to come off the ground. It's a nice building on the inside, but from the outside, this place is kind of an eyesore, the dilapidated fence. Again, I was coming into this open-minded, maybe we get a fence out of it. Maybe they'll fix the sinkhole in my driveway that's sinking my driveway, my septic, because this school used to have an old crib system. So right here is an old crib system. It sank the entire driveway here, and it sank my power and water. I like my neighbors, so we haven't really said anything, but if somebody else in the city's moving in there, maybe we might. But as you can see, Baker Street, there's not even a road there. This is Kathy's driveway. I think it was Baker Street. It's Baker Street on the map, but it goes to a fence. It goes to the Mental Health Trust land here. There's nothing here, and so we're here. Flavio's here. I believe Mr. Brown, he's down here. There's a number of kids that live here. There's a number of kids that live here. There's just a ton of kids that live here, and they are all over.
Can I get you to turn your button back on there?
Oh, sorry. Currently, they have a few cars there, but they are, they're not creating traffic as a residence. You would definitely be increasing the traffic in this neighborhood. And I appreciate the tribe and what they want to do. I am from Dillingham. I used to run a legal aid office in Dillingham for a number of years with the Aleutian tribe. I was embedded into the BBNC. So I completely appreciate what they do, but I am adamantly opposed to having it happen in my front yard. And it's very very evident that this is not a conditional use permit for a limited use. This is the foot in the door for a far more permanent use in the middle of a purely residential neighborhood. So, I'm sorry if I'm a little unprepared and a little emotional here, but I mean, we were in Kasilof listening on the phone like, oh, this will be great. So we sped all the way here.
Driving 110 miles an hour will get you all amped up, right?
Yeah, no, it did. It really did. And if I had known better, if I'd had more notice, if I'd had any idea, I'm an attorney by trade, I'm a district attorney here in Kenai. If I had had any idea what was going on here, I'd have looked at these factors, I'd have looked at the conditional use stuff. I would have put a little far more effort into a presentation. At this point, I'm just making a diligent plea. But it doesn't seem like this fits. This is not a consistent use. I don't see how we can even couch this as a consistent use because there was some institutionalized quasi-commercial use at one point. Again, because John, attempted to run a yoga studio or a taekwondo studio out of the building. When you go in a house, that area that they're talking about, it's smaller than this. It's kind of the same setup, but it's far shorter. It's a very small area. It's definitely not a, I forget the word that they used. Auditorium. It's just a big room. And then they've made a very nice, very lovely home in the back of it. But I can't really speak to the rest of it. I addressed the parking. I definitely don't think there's a need for a stop sign. I mean, you'd have to redo the entire road there. You'd have to separate Kathy's access. She would need adequate access there that was separate from the building and the road. They'd have to develop Baker Street to really make this feasible. Otherwise, you realistically only have one entry into this parking lot. They really would have to put up a fence. Otherwise, I would literally be, staring at tribal workers all day long. Every time my kids fire up a four-wheeler or whatever it is, this is a constant active neighborhood. Are we going to be getting calls to law enforcement? Are we going to be getting, calls from the city like we need to tone it down, we need to keep it down, keep your kids off the street, keep your kids out of our parking lot? Like, what is this going to turn into? There was something, again, I apologize, I'm not prepared for this, but I felt it was my only opportunity to speak. Something about a buffer zone around, a requirement for a buffer around these properties. Yeah, that may be true for the flagpole driveway there between 1307 and 1311 and myself, but once you get past that flagpole, once you get past that building, that's my front yard. Like, that's it. And it's small to begin with because they've got the fence pushed up all the way, and so I literally share a front yard with this building. There is no buffer there between my yard. It's gravel, but that's my yard. That's my front yard. That's where my shelter logic is. I have a garage here. I have parking here. I've got 6 cars in the driveway from all the traffic that I bring with my family and kids. There's going to be literally no buffer, and it's just overgrown with plants in that area now because John's wife was, I think, seeding the fence. But
I'll tell you what, you're past your 3 minutes, which is okay. But I'm going to see if anyone else has any questions that maybe you can answer specifically. We'll see if anyone has anything. Well, I'm going to ask you one then for sure. So back to the notice. When we're trying to make sure we are getting this notice out and everybody's happy with that. When did you get your notice? Or
you got to talk to the boss.
Sometime after June 14th, but probably like a week maybe.
Okay, and you're checking your mail pretty regular? So okay,
yeah.
All right.
And again, it had no detail on it. Just, we're going to have this hearing. Come take a look. You might have a building or a conditional use permit approved in your front yard. There was literally no detail. So
okay. And I'll have Director Mitchell back me up on this, but you'd mentioned maybe the way to would be to develop a portion of Baker Street on the edge of that property, but I think we talked about that earlier. That has been vacated. That no longer is an option. Is that correct, Director Mitchell?
Thank you, Chair Pro Tem. Correct, and I'm going to pull the existing plat for the subject lot, and this was back in the late 70s. And I'm gonna try to see if I can zoom in here. So the subject lot is lot 1A, and you can see right here this dashed line, which would have been the expansion of Baker through the subject property. As you can see here, the 50-foot right-of-way was vacated by this plat and dated back in 1979.
And we had a name change, I guess, to the street somewhere and after that too, then it looks like, huh?
Correct.
Okay.
It's the edge of the parking lot these days. It's Kathy's driveway. I don't even, it's just leftover pavement, I guess. I don't know what you'd call it. And it terminates right about the end of their parking lot.
Okay. All right. Any, I guess, anybody else have any questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For giving me more than a few minutes. I really, really do appreciate it. And again, I guess, I mean, all I can do is beg at this point. This is a nightmare for me. You're gonna kill the value of my property. Sounds like we're putting a daycare in my front yard. I mean, I wish I had more time to prepare so I could address this appropriately instead of looking like a manic fool up here. But I appreciate the time that you've given me.
Okay, and I will just say that, you know, we talked about this before you got here, that this actual application is just to, you know, move some administrative people in there. And then they do have future plans. They've not, you know, haven't hid that at all. But that would be definitely a different conversation down the road. So, I mean.
Well, and I think my neighbor nailed that on the head, though, and maybe it wasn't you, maybe it was the older gentleman. Once we've got time, so my father-in-law sits on the planning commission in Palmer right now, Terry Nicodemus. He consults with me on this kind of stuff all the time. We talk about this stuff all the time, and when I quit my job, I fully intend to go into this type of law. We all know that this is a foot in the door for future use. There's really no hiding that ball. It's a little disingenuous to even suggest it, that this is specifically for that, because that's exactly what the plan is here. That's exactly what their open plan is here. And we all know that once that door is opened, it is far, far easier, and I will have no recourse at that point. So none of us will. I'm being a little selfish here. I mean, it's not just me. There's a number of neighbors that aren't here that feel the same, especially Flavio across the way. It's a good purpose. It's a good thing. It's a terrible place for it. It's a residential neighborhood, right smack dab in the middle of one of the busiest residential neighborhoods around. Dead shot to the golf course right there. I mean, there's just kids everywhere. So, again, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. Anyone else? Yep, please come forward. And the red button's still on, but you can state your name for the record, please.
Danette Howland, and I'm the current resident of 1311 Cayana. And part of what I wanted to speak to is we keep saying that there was never any business there. We had a pretty thriving little yoga and martial arts business there, and I appreciated that Brad said people were respectful. But I mean, sometimes we would have 20 cars. I had 30 people at some of my classes. I mean, so it did exist as a business. I think we started in maybe 2014, and had it till 2019. I kind of got out right before COVID, luckily, and but I also agree with Brad that the one lane of traffic is hard. There's a lot of on-street parking. That's like a separate issue from this conditional use permit. The kids up and down the streets on their four-wheelers and motorcycles is also a separate issue from this conditional use permit. They're not supposed to be doing that. And it is kind of hard to listen to, but we also love our neighbors, and those kids are adorable, and I want them all safe, and I want them to have fun, and I love that they have a good neighborhood. I believe this isn't going to change that. I mean, I hear what everybody's saying, I do, but my grandkids are in Anchorage, and I really want to move, and this is contingent on the sale, so I have a vested interest. And also, you, if you want that parking lot redone, I think they can do it better than we can. I think they can replace a fence better than we can, and I bet they can paint the building. I am sorry it's an eyesore. We are not wealthy people. It's an undertaking, maintaining a space, an acre of asphalt and a 4,000 to 5,000 square foot building that does have an auditorium inside. It is large. It has a stage. That's why they call it an auditorium. And I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Hang around. Someone will have a question for you, I'm sure. Maybe not. All right. Well, very good. Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm Kathy McMurray at 1501 Kiana Lane. And I love my neighbors, Janet included. It is a great neighborhood. Well, there's one house that's kind of nefarious, but we all have those, right? I also did not get anything in the mail. I didn't get any notification there. And so I wanted that to be noted. I also wanted to note that with all the traffic and down to one lane in the winter and all the children that are out there, I have called. I've had the police come to my door and I've said, why can't you do something about this? Someone's gonna get run over, some kid's gonna get killed out here, and nothing has ever happened. I've actually had a police officer tell me that they couldn't make them move their vehicles off the street. So there's that. The other thing is, my house doesn't look so pretty right now because I suffered a house fire and half the house was gone. And it's been a very slow process because now I'm in court with Steamway and State Farm soon to follow. But so my yard is out of control and I'm still trying to finish my home. I'm a single woman living there and my 16-year-old granddaughter lives with me. And my grandson is 9 years old, and he has some special needs, but he plays with every kid in the neighborhood, and Flavio's family, just wonderful. Anyway, the kids do come through that parking lot, and I drive into that to get into my property, and I'm wondering how is that gonna affect me accessing my home and all. So that's just a question I have, and how these fences, how is it going to affect the children in the neighborhood? And you're not going to keep the children off of the pavement. I know Danette has tried, and I've tried to tell the children that are always over at my house, stick to the trees, don't go through the parking lot, But, yeah. Anyway, I think that's all I got to say.
All right, thank you.
All right, I see we have Paula Carlisle on Zoom again with your hand raised, so I'll give this a try. If you want to try to unmute. All right, Paula, I am sorry, but we are still unable to hear you.
All right. Well, that's unfortunate, but I will ask one last time then if there's anyone else that would like to come forward and testify.
We could hear Paula when we were logged on. We could hear her talking. You guys apparently couldn't.
Yeah, we were on the phone.
Okay.
We called in and we could hear her.
Unfortunately, that won't help us, I don't think, though, huh?
I can't see anything on my end. If you'd like to call for an at ease, I can
Reboot it, maybe? Okay.
end the Zoom call and
Okay.
restart it if
Yeah.
those people on Zoom would like to
Okay,
try
yeah,
and
why
see
don't
if
we,
that helps.
we'd like to give them an opportunity, so why don't we do that? We'll take 5 minutes. Thank you.
All right, so Paula and John Costin online. I am going to end the Zoom call, and I'm going to restart it here in just a moment. If you want to try to reconnect, hopefully that'll help with the audio issues. Thanks. John, are you able to hear us?
Can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Okay.
Good.
All right, we'll wait just a couple more minutes then. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and mute until we get started again.
Okay, thanks.
All right, we are back on the record, and we're going to see if our telephonic, she's gone, huh? She's not on yet, no. All right. What do we wait?
No, we do not.
Okay, well, because I don't think anyone else is left to testify, so we'll close the public hearing. We can, if he does show up, we can make an exception. Okay, all right. All right, last chance then for anyone else that would like to testify that hasn't already testified. And seeing none, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. And we'll start our discussion now. Commissioner Petty.
Yes, I'd like to ask Ms. Mitchell, when was the vacation of that lot line on Baker Street, please? Is that in our records?
Through the chair, thank you, Commissioner Petty. You're asking what year that plat was approved?
No, the lot line vacation on Baker Street. That
The portion
easement.
on the subject lot?
Yes, ma'am.
That occurred with that plat. Usually vacations of right-of-ways are concurrently processed through that plat. So when that plat was approved, that vacation was approved.
Was that 1979?
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Director Mitchell, you had proposed a couple of extra conditions. Do you want to address those real quick so everybody's familiar and refreshed in their mind?
Thank you, Chair Pro Tem Twait. So the conditions that staff is recommending your commission consider with the if your commission approves this is conditions 3 and 4, meaning that if they don't have the existing landscape or the buffer, that this condition will require it of them, meaning, you know, as mentioned by one of the testimonies that, and it's the neighbor to the northwest, that the landscaping is non-existent, right? So the condition will then require them to plant and provide that buffer. And furthermore, it says if they don't provide shrubberies and trees, then they need to provide a minimum 6-foot fence to protect the residential neighborhood. And so staff is giving some flexibility there because I know I've been doing this long enough. Landscaping is contingent on maintaining it as well. It's not always there. And so if that's not in place, then we would require them to provide a fence as a buffer along adjacent neighbors. So those are the two conditions that, one, the setbacks that are in place within that zone, they provide that buffer and maintain that buffer as is. So meaning if they were to further expand that, they can't encroach into that landscape buffer. And furthermore, if the landscape is not there, then they must provide a minimum 6-foot fence or wall around the perimeter of the property.
All right, so I'm hoping commissioners retain that so we can, if we want to go down that road, we can make that amendment. Also, with that, just for clarification, do we want to, you didn't set a time frame. I'm just curious if we want to set a time frame with that as well. I know, again, that gets tricky depending on the time of the year, but we could find out that the plans are in place to begin to start putting a fence up, but if we don't have any, we don't have a stick to go with the carrot, what do we have? So I'm just kind of curious if we want to put, if that's something you would think would be important to add to that.
Thank you, Chair Pro Tem Twait. So if I'm understanding your question correctly, you want to put a time frame on the landscaping and the fencing, correct?
Correct.
Typically, our landscape requirements gives it up to 2 years because even if they plant anything, it's not going to be sufficient right away. And so I typically follow code, and your commission can otherwise change the condition that with the landscape and site plan, the fencing, typically they have up to 2 years to provide that. Of course, they would put things in place, and we're expecting that there's adequate screening within 2 years. And if not, then we would look at requiring them to put that fence. But it is up to your commission to say, hey, we just want you to put a fence within 6 months from the approval of the state. That is within your purview.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Petty?
Yes, that fencing, would that be around the entire perimeter, or is it just on that space that adjoins Mr. Davenport's property?
Director Mitchell?
So that would be up to you. Particularly, what I'm asking is to adequately shield vehicular or building lights from neighboring residential. So depending on how they the parking and how they utilize it, it may be the entire perimeter. Probably not to the north because it's currently a vacant lot. What's challenging on the east property line is a residential lot, and there's really no landscaping buffer because it was intended that Baker would be expanded. The challenge there is it's all asphalt. It really have to be creative to provide natural vegetation screening to the lot to the east. So maybe a fence to the east side is appropriate because they can't provide that landscaping. By default, in essence, the applicant will have to come decide whether it's landscaping or a fencing that they'll be doing on the perimeters abutting residential uses.
Thank you. Commissioner Petty?
I would like to make an amendment to this CUP that would correspond to the buffering of fencing or landscaping as our Ms. Mitchell recommended. And do you have those words for an amendment that we could put into this wording?
Would you like to take an Addie's so we can make a motion, write out a motion for the amendment? Is that what you're
Yeah, we
asking?
probably should do that.
Yes, I'd like to
All
do
right.
that.
All right, we are back on the record. Commissioner Petty.
Yes, I'd like to withdraw my amendment and recommend all of the staff's recommendations for this resolution. Thank you.
We don't need those restated. We got that. I think everybody's good. Okay. Well, then I guess we need to move on to any other discussion items regarding this then. Everybody's done, huh? All right, well, I guess what would be the right thing to do is maybe just to go ahead and kind of give our position on things and let everybody kind of know where we're going with this, and I'll start with that. And I get, and I've talked with some of you guys, and I know your concerns that, I'm not saying this facetiously, but the boogeyman down the road is going to be the problem, not necessarily what's going to happen now. And I get that, but we do have the way it works, and it's, I know we'll get people will be shaking their head and say, no, once this is started, it's hard to stop. And it isn't. It really isn't. And I've been on this commission a long time, and we have had similar things in the past that you can see what is coming and what might be the situation. And I really don't, it'd be inappropriate for us, first of all, to decline this based on what something potentially in the future would be. Right now we're looking at a narrow scope, and as the director pointed out, I think it does meet the criteria to have a conditional use. And I think some of the testimony was that there's been times in the past that the traffic has been as aggressive as what this potentially is going to be for this conditional use. I wish I would have had asked, and I didn't, of the applicants, what their hours being. I would assume we're looking at normal business hours, and so, as far as neighbors go, in the evenings and then the weekends, for the most part, you're going to have the best neighbors ever. They won't be there. So I just don't see that this, what could be something down the future, would be a reason to deny this. So, and with that being said, taking into account and hopefully that in the time that they are there, that it gives them time to have a little outreach with the members, and we can see that this is a better fit than what you guys might think right now. I'll be supporting this. Commissioner Fikes.
Yes, I appreciate the testimony on both sides of the aisle. From what I was hearing in the audience, I can appreciate what the landowner now says. I do believe you had a very successful business. I know, as somebody who did attend the yoga classes there, they were sold out, so you didn't always get a chance to go. I did see it in the summertime and the wintertime, so I saw how you kept up the parking lot and kept it cleared. And things were neat and orderly from the times that I was there. And I've heard the testimony from the potential purchasers that, they would like to be good stewards of the neighborhood. They'd like to embrace some of the youth and have some engagement with them and have some engagement with their culture and to have everybody coalesce together. I think that's a fantastic unity for our community. And so as this fits the criteria before us, as the director has stated, and gone above and beyond that through some of our own discussion and some of what she's reviewed, and she's put in 4 additional concerns that I think hit on some of the testimony. We talked about some of the shielding and what that might look like with landscaping and/or fencing. They talked about their potential hours of operation for their administrative offices. They discussed how many staff may be actually participating, and it was a very small number. Again, I remember when it was what I considered a successful yoga studio, and I know there's martial arts there was more than 10 cars there. It was very successful. So I think this is going to be very low impact, and I think it's going to be a good thing. And so meeting the criteria for the conditional use as it's stated today, I see no problem to decline this, and I will be voting for it.
Thank you. Commissioner Petty.
Yes, I appreciate everyone that came out and testified this evening. I too had the privilege to participate when this facility was a thriving business, and also attended some of the presentations that were in the auditorium with close to over 30 guests that were there in attendance. And our scope that we're looking at is just for this conditional use permit, and they have met all the criteria, and we have looked at the staff recommendations for the extra things that this conditional use permit would be under those guidelines and stipulations that the Zelementov tribe would have to take care of if they wanted to move forward. And so I will be in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Woodard.
It really bothers me that the residents are so against it. So I have a real hard time saying yes. I know that the criteria is met. I feel like as long as I've been on here, we're going more and more towards letting businesses go into neighborhoods. And I personally am not for that. Although they have met the requirements, I'm going to say no.
All right, and I'll just add one last thing, and then I believe we'll be ready to vote. But some of the concerns. First of all, the noticing, and I know Director Mitchell's got that on her notes there. This, and I've been, again, like I said, I've been on this commission for a long time, and I think we continue to try to get better at it. But it seems like somebody always slips through the cracks, and so I think that's duly noted that we need to try to find a better way to make sure everybody gets noticed. And then the other concerns, with the traffic and the single lane in the wintertime, it was stated, I think, by Ms. Howland that really is a separate issue, although I think it's been brought up, and I think the Public Works Department and some of these other people will probably get a phone call very shortly and we have a city council member here, so he'll have it duly noted as well. That needs to be improved where we can too, because it is something that the residents deserve, and you pay taxes for it. So we can do our best to fix some of those things as well. So with that being said, if nobody has any other comments to make, we'll go ahead and call for the vote, please.
Commissioner Fikes?
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Twait?
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard?
No.
Commissioner Petty?
Yes.
Okay, with 3 yes votes and 1 no vote, and the motion passes.
All right, and there is a 15-day appeal period that an affected party can file with the clerk's office, and after that period is ran its course, if no one has filed, then the conditional use permit will be granted. So thank everybody for testifying. It was, we've had some that get a little heated and get out of control, and this was done very nicely and very well. I appreciate that from everybody. And I bet everybody's ready to move right along, huh?
Yes.
All right. We are going to move on then to item F2, Resolution PZ 2024-17, granting a conditional use permit to operate a cabin rental, short-term rental of the existing single-family dwelling on the property described as Lot 1, Block 4, Central Heights subdivision located at 213 Portlock Street within the Suburban Residential Zoning District. Can I get a motion, please?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve Resolution PZ 2024-17, granting conditional use permit to operate a cabin rental.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Staff report, please.
Thank you, Chair Pro Tem Twait and Commissioners and member of the public. So the CUP before you is a cabin rental, otherwise known as a short-term rental, located at 213 Portlock. Let's get to the next slide here. Current use is a single-family dwelling. The zoning that in which it's located is within the suburban residential zone. Comp plan designated as a suburban residential, and the lot size is 0.15 of an acre. Primary uses are all residential in this area, with the exception of the east property. It's a city-owned property, and it's a vacant lot, but it's an open space conservation zone, as you can see there. And I would point out, I know it's really hard to see in your packet, it does note suburban residential 2. It's this far sliver all the way on the other side of the conservation, and that's where it's located, where you see RS2. This is the applicant's floor plan of the existing house, and noting as previous in the previous CUP, staff is spending more time to indicate the use and where it's allowed. So this is for cabin rental of the existing single-family dwelling. This is their layout. Looks like there's a 3-bedroom home, and their parking would be to the side with the garage, 1-car garage. You see the parking 1, 2, 3 parking spaces. Typically for a single-family residence, the number of required off-street parking is 2 per dwelling unit. So there are at least 3 parking spaces off the street on the premise. And similarly, I do want to point out a little bit more back history as well. There is another CUP that was approved for a cabin short-term rental probably further down Portlock on the same street. And as I further discuss, I did add a condition that's similar to this proposal for consistency within this neighborhood corridor. I know in the past we've asked about hours of operation, but it really depends on where it is, because if you're near a school where they have events all night long, you're going to put quiet hours when school events we have zero control over. This particular neighborhood is really primarily embedded in a residential neighborhood. There aren't any quick through traffic in this area. It is strictly residential. And for this reason, to be consistent with the previous CUP for cabin rentals, it was added quiet hours because at that time, the neighbors were concerned with noises, and so it's appropriate to continue to carry that on with this CUP. As noted, this is zone suburban residential. Staff does find that it is consistent with the use because they're not making any changes to the dwelling unit itself. It will appear residential. It is used short-term rental, less than 30 days, and seasonal. And then in terms of the economic and non-economic value of this, staff does not find that the proposal of this would diminish it. Typically what we have seen of these short-term rentals is people reinvest in their properties and make those improvements to make it more attractive, right? And further, the applicant had noted that they would go through a screening process, just like anyone else. So further, it's just not someone you could just let in and let out and just destroy the neighborhood. So that is a further commitment of the applicant. Proposed use in terms of in harmony with the comp plan, again, it's similar, suburban residential. Staff doesn't find that this is a commercial activity. It's just the length of term of residency is shorter than your long-term length. Public services and facilities are there. It would not require additional and would not impact on the existing infrastructures. And approving the CUP would not require any improvements and so forth because Portlock Street is a paved city-maintained road. And lastly, whether this proposed use will not be harmful to the public safety, health, or welfare. Staff finds that with the adequate off-street parking and the buffer, as noted in the staff report, to the south of the property is an unusual 10-foot walkway that leads to the conservation. So there's that buffer in between the property to the south. And furthermore, as I dove in deeper, the property to the north used to be under a CUP, but that was withdrawn back in 2022, and that CUP was for offices. Yes, under the same ownership, Scott Cunningham. They relocated and they submitted a withdrawal letter back in 2022 when I first started. So that gives a little bit more history that historically, we had allowed offices just to the north of this property not too long ago. So staff doesn't find additional buffers are needed. Mostly to the east is vacant lot, and then they have the street and then a 10-foot walkway buffer to the south. And staff finds that condition criteria 5 is met. Otherwise, the only condition that staff is proposing your commission consider is the hours to be consistent with the other short-term rental on the same street. That really concludes staff's presentation. Is recommending your commission approve this resolution for a short-term rental at 213 Port Block Street. Happy to answer any questions your commission may have.
All right, thank you. At this time, we'll let the applicant, whoever the architect was, wants to come up and. All right, fair enough. So, all right, if you can state your name for the record, please.
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Frank Donovan. I purchased the property 14 years ago with my wife Lindsay to raise our kids. So I guess Miss Linda pretty well drew it out. If you guys have any questions or any concerns about our intentions with it, I mean, we lived in that neighborhood for 11 years. Our daughter still has friends in this neighborhood. So, I mean, we do care, and like the neighbors across the street, we work with them. The Cunninghams, when we bought the house, it was their office. You know, we know them as perfect neighbors.
We got to use their driveway when we had our kids' birthday party.
Yeah, and I know I drew the picture. It shows shows you can park 3 cars. We raised 4 kids in that house, so we have twins. And when they turned 16, they each had a car. My wife and I had a vehicle. So. And then you got to think when they had friends come over, yeah, you can fit more than 3. But I just wanted to stress that we're not going to have more than 3, and we'll do as far as the rules and stuff like that to limit that. It's a strict application that you go. It's a screening process, and you put in there strictly how many tenants could be in there for a night. Limit it to 4. That's the max we want in there. A family of 4, possibly 5 if it's children, and the cut down on the traffic.
All right, Commissioner Fikes.
I just have a follow-up question along those lines. So it's currently vacant now, but was it being rented as a long-term rental or it just stayed empty?
No. So
We just put our kids in after they graduated high school to kind
yeah,
of watch it for us.
regrettingly, we had our twins in there. So it's been empty since they went to college.
Oh, and then again, following that up through the chair pro tem. So if you're going to do the short-term rental and you're going to keep an eye on the parking, is that going to include boat trailers or RVs or
That's not
anything?
gonna be allowed.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
It has to strictly fit in the driveway. And
Yeah.
Just because.
Yeah. No, absolutely not. I mean, we got, and the request that you guys mentioned about the quiet time, yeah, absolutely, of course, it's a neighborhood. The same goes for we're worried about that too, because what does everybody come up here for? Fishing, right? And that's awesome, and we want that. We want to promote that. But I don't want fish guts in our house and all that, and then taking boats out in the driveway, no, so.
And then if there is, and if there is an issue, are you guys going to be available or on site to address anything immediately, or?
We live 5 minutes away, so.
Oh, gotcha.
Not that we would spy, but I mean, you're definitely curious about your property. And like I said, we're friends with our neighbors, so the neighbors looking out the window, we'll know.
Gotcha. Sounds good. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, thank you. Now, do you have anything you want to add? Are you sure? Okay. All right, and I think we have nobody online. All right, so then we will close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission. We got to get Miss Petty out of here. She's getting tired. All right, so any discussion? I was going to say, I remember when we did the other one a few years back, and we went long, and there was a lot of neighbors then that, most of them were in support, but there was a few that were concerned about things and that, but I haven't heard anything negative since that one was in there, and I think we were monitoring cameras. It was all talked about how they were going to check them in and out and the whole thing, but yeah, I think this said, it's becoming a trend that is definitely something we're seeing here more and more often. So I think we've welcomed it and encouraged by it. So it's good for the community. So I would be in support of it. And if anyone else has anything else to chime in, if not, we will go ahead and call the vote. Commissioner Petty? No? All right. Ready to call the vote then.
All right, Commissioner Barboza?
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard?
Yes.
Commissioner Petty?
Yes.
Commissioner Fikes?
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Thwaite?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. So again, 15-day appeal period. I should apologize now. We should have flipped around and had you guys go first, and you could have got out of here a lot quicker. But I didn't think about it at the time, so sorry about that. Anyway, thank you very much. We have no unfinished business. New business was handled through our consent agenda, so we'll go to reports and start with our planning director, Director Mitchell.
Thank you, Chair Pro Tem. I don't have much besides this is my last meeting with your commission. My last day with the city will be next Friday, so I'm just working my tail off to wrap up what I can. I think I should be able to relay that Max Best will be the interim planner for that until they hire a permanent planning director. So Max will start next week part-time, and so there will be a 1 week kind of overlap before I leave. Other than that, you know, it's, again, it's been a pleasure. Thank you. I have felt heard by your commission, and I appreciate the support. And, you know, I've enjoyed my time here. So I have really, I wish I could have stayed here longer because I see so much potential here. I really do. And I've always told your commission that what you do is difficult, you know, to balance the community needs. But again, I want to put emphasis on how important that comp plan is, right? Because if the comp plan for this CUP tonight was designated as RS, I can assure you my recommendation wouldn't have not been approval. And this is kind of, I always take the opportunity to educate people during this comp plan. Look at your neighborhood, look at the land use, because if there's, the land use table says it's a C potentially, and that third condition in harmony with the comp plan, it's not there, then they can have assurance that they won't see something like this. But our comp plan obviously needs updated because it is a little unusual to have an institution smack in the middle of a residential zone. That makes it difficult for your commission to deny it. It really does. And hopefully, you know, in the future, I would recommend the next planning director, because I think it's education, is having more workshops like these to educate people during the process. For the notification of what was brought about, you know, it was vague, the description. It's vague because if you get too descriptive, people get overly concerned. I'd rather have that conversation and say, hey, this is what they're really proposing, and if you really do have a concern, please show up, and this is how we review the criteria. I take that opportunity in hopes that they would reach out to me. But the only comment that we received is what was presented to you, and a few phone calls that Brandon received was concern about traffic. If Mr. Davenport would have reached out, I would have been happily relayed all the information to him and provided in detail. He wouldn't even have to read the staff report, because I really believe in this process of transparency and having the opportunity to come forth before your commission and speak on their neighborhood. But then again, it's always about the criteria. Is the reason how you approve it is also the reason criteria and how you deny it. So I'm all about educating, giving them the tools for them to be successful here. In my 10 years of doing this, it's always, if we show up, you guys have already made a decision. No, absolutely not. I work with you the same way with an applicant than I do with the public. And yes, you show up and you're sharing your concerns, but are you hitting the point of the criteria? So this is really for the general public, whoever's listening to this meeting, is that's how the process works. And I hope that we can educate the community more of how this works and the tools of the comp plan, in hopes that we can move towards a place where we truly envision how our community and neighborhood grows. Other than that, thank you. Thank you for who you are and what you do and showing up to these meetings. I appreciate you, and I know sometimes the public doesn't show up, but it doesn't mean what you do is not important. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of our director? I could do this later, I guess, but I just want to say thank you for a lot of what you have done. And I'm especially tonight when you clarified the getting noticed because it wasn't available to you to do that. And I think that's good to make sure it was out there and understood that it wasn't some sort of back room deal of some kind or whatever was going to happen. But I think, Councilmember Dothett can pass this on too, but I think I would be in favor of looking at changing an ordinance to do this noticing, because it is always a thing, and some people just don't check their mail, some people are gone, but it always becomes a thing, and I think that whatever we can do to fine-tune that somehow, I think would be good, because it does feel like people seem to think that they're, trying to get shorthanded on their opportunity, and so I'm glad you clarified that. So I wish you luck. Anyone else? All right, then I'm going to move right past the old commission chair because I didn't think I was going to be here, and again, I got nothing else to add other than what I just said. So, Borough Planning, Commissioner Fikes.
All righty then. We had a meeting on Monday, and yikes, where's your stuff? There we go. I think we had, utility easement vacation and the Coho area right away. That one went through, no issues. Brought us around to a request to vacate approximately 255 feet of Galkin Street in the Salamatoff area. And that one was approved. There was a little bit of discussion on some of the lots on that street. If we were to vacate it, how would they get access to their property? The area in concern was actually quite remote, and so people were just starting to purchase up the land, and so that was kind of discussed how that might work, and there was some alternate access, and so it was eventually approved. And then we had a discussion ordinance to incorporate the City of Soldotna Riverfront Development Plan, and we got to hear a little bit of a presentation from the City of Soldotna, and that was kind of interesting, and some visual presentations, a PowerPoint on how they want to move forward and what they want that to look like, and how they want to embrace and bring more activities and events down there, but they, want to do it in a controlled manner because they understand the flow of traffic, and so it was kind of nice to see that. If you want, it's still up and available on the borough website, and that was very nice to see. And so we supported them wholeheartedly on the plan and pushed that forward to go ahead and approve it at the assembly level. And then that rolled us around to a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a lease agreement with the U.S. Forest Service for the Cooper Mountain communication site. And they were already in it. It was just kind of an administrative thing, and so it had expired, and so we just pushed it out another 29 years. It's a very remote area. I'm not totally sure, but I think it's downward. They're doing some of the construction now in the Cooper Landing area. But like I say, it didn't impact wildlife. It didn't impact any residences or anything. And like I say, it's been kicking along for the last 20 years, so they pushed it out another 29 years. And then let's see. Oh, that's what most of our night was kicked towards. We had a hazard mitigation plan, and so we had a PowerPoint presentation on that from some folks from Anchorage. And so you're probably going, well, gosh, why do I really care about a hazard mitigation plan? Well, that was kind of the cool thing. So they told us, so you as a city want to have that hazard mitigation plan because, oh my gosh, there's fire. Oh, wow, now there's an earthquake. Oh gosh, there's a gas leak. Okay, what does that look like? Well, we got to evacuate people, and we've got to have a semblance, and we got to have rulings, and so, we got to have Red Cross, we got to have grants. And so all these things come into play with a hazard mitigation plan. It's kind of, for lack of a better way to say it, a comp plan for natural disasters and events that may occur, and whose role and whose departments we're going to pivot and go to, and what that sequence and those roles are. So it was kind of cool once they broke it all down, because otherwise you're just kind of going, okay, yeah, okay. But having the earthquake example, that kind of tied it in for a lot of people. And then we had another one for the Habitat Protection District. And so the folks over at the River Center, they kind of came in and gave a PowerPoint presentation also on what they're doing and what they're looking at. And again, why do we care? You know, it's just a little stream. Is there fish in this stream? Oh, is this an important stream? And again, it started with folks in Nikiski who said that they had some fish in their area, and then they didn't have fish anymore, and then the water had dried up. So it was kind of a collaboration with the community as well as the folks in the management resources. And when you bring those two together, you can get a more realistic, updated vision and version of any of the waterways in our area. And so people, as they start purchasing and developing property, and how that might impact the value of the land and stuff. So, and you bring all these tools together, and then that kind of gets to be important. So that was kind of a nice little report to have. And that brought us to the director's comments, and he topped it off with passing the gravel amendment. And the only conditions on that were discussed were double wall tanks. So everything that was in the proposal and finalized went through. The only addition was just the double wall tanks. So everything that had been out there before had been pushed forward, and so, yeah. We wrapped it up.
Any questions? Commissioner Petty?
I don't quite understand double wall tanks for hauling gravel.
I believe there's different pieces of equipment that are part of the gravel operation. And so there's gravel trucks, there's belly dumps, there's side dumps, there's water trucks that go and drop water to do dust mitigation. So I believe they were talking about double-walled tanks for storage on these properties. So if they need to have additional water trucks coming, but they're far away from a water source, so they're going to have a storage tank there. I believe that's what he was referring to.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right. Councilmember Dothett.
Well, I won't lie. I was not here for the last meeting. And I got a quick rundown from Councilman Daniel. So I'll give you the 5,000-foot view of it. But I'm pretty sure the Clarion did a really good job of breaking down the key points on the front page of the Clarion for the one day that they are printing, it sounds like. The big things were the leakage study. I'm sure you've heard about the leakage study at the airport. If not, it's pretty cool. Look into that. Basically, they came out and said, yeah, we might be able to justify and support a larger airlines moving in, i.e. something like Alaska Airlines possibly putting up a flight directly to Seattle or something like that. It is feasible, and we could do it. So now they're applying for a grant that will help assure a certain amount of funding, for a minimum amount of funding for an agency like Alaska or some other might want to move in, would be guaranteed so much funding a month or annually to be able to support them for so many years, to be able to start that route and let it catch on. Once, if and when that comes through, which could be the next few months, then they will be pursuing, actually trying to find it. And they meaning city staff, will be able to go and actually pursue a carrier to see if it's feasible. And if they can talk a carrier into making it feasible, then it would be us modifying our airport to making a certain area of it TSA compliant and starting the process. It sounds like it's going to happen overnight, but it's still several years out realistically, but it's a big, it was a big accomplishment to have this study done and to show that it is feasible. And if you get a chance to listen to the presentation that the gentleman gave, he was pretty adamant that, yeah, this can happen with minimal effects on the current carriers that are here. just because they have a lot more flexibility, and most of what they're doing is commuter people, singles and doubles, and couples and smaller groups, where this would hit on those people that just drive because it's so expensive to fly to Anchorage. Like, i.e., my family, buying 6 tickets is very expensive. There is a market for it, and they said it was feasible. So that was pretty neat. I was really curious about that one. On not some cool news, the water and sewer rate study came in, and they will be raising those rates slowly over the next 4 or 5 years. I had the numbers in my head, but now I forgot them. But it's not going to be huge increases, but it will be a steady increase over the next several years. There will be rates increasing to keep up with the costs and the needs with that. Cook Inlet View Drive was renamed to Cook Inlet Drive, so they'll be buying new signs for that. That was a long process, but it got taken care of, and apparently there's a few people on that road that are happy about it. So we'll see if that makes a difference. Those are basically the biggest things that stand out, and like I said, two of those 3 were on the front pages of the Clarion. And I'm just happy to see that we passed, I think I talked about last time, we did pass our advertising budget to be able to advertise more city business on the radios. And just so happens, as soon as we pass that in the budget, a week later, the Clarion announces they're going down to 1 day a week. So I think that was good timing to give us another avenue to be able to try to promote these kind of things and meetings and stuff like that. So I'm excited to see that starting after the 1st of July. So hopefully we'll get some good ads out there. So keep your ears open on the radio. We should have ads hopefully by the first week or 2 of July, so that's when the budget cycle starts, and maybe promoting some of our meetings and stuff like that. So anyway, thank you everybody for this. It was a very long and involved meeting, but I think it came with some good findings. It's always important to have those findings out there, because without findings, it's very difficult if this were to get contested for the council to have a long meeting over it. But I think this one, with the findings you guys all supported and showed in this, I think if it does get contested, we'll have some legs to stand on there. So thank you for that.
Any questions? I got 2. Well, one, can we still drive down Cook Inlet Drive and look at the view at the end of it, or is that no longer
I
allowed
think the
either?
view got taken away. I don't
know. The more important one was, and I don't know, you may know the answer to this, and maybe it was talked about with this study for the airport. When they just did this most recent renovation in there, did they plan, or is there an avenue to do this TSA compliant stuff, or is that going to require a bunch of going backwards to go forward?
It is TSA compliant.
It is for the small aircraft. What is now, if we go to a larger carrier, they would have to put a security checkpoint in. I don't believe it was in these plans, but from what I've understood, they do know that it is feasible to do it with a remodel, essentially taking since there are several doors essentially to access the airport, they would have to modify one access to have a small, we're not talking Anchorage International size TSA pre-check or TSA checkpoint, but they do have to have a security checkpoint that is secure, that allow you to go through from one side to the other. And it is feasible. It will take some remodeling. They'd had to do the study to decide if it was feasible or not, and I think it's a huge opportunity for the city to possibly expand. I know for one, I would be thrilled to not have to drive to Anchorage in the middle of the winter to take my children all the way up there, because I don't want to spend $1,200 on airfare. So I think it would be a great thing, even if it's, and they're not saying it's not going to be, from what the study was like, it probably won't be multiple flights a day. It might not even be in the beginning every day, but they're set to start off, it could be every other day there's a flight directly to Seattle or something like that, and then might move into every day. And that's where they were basically saying that the smaller airlines like Kenai Aviation and Grant, they have a lot more flexibility, right? They fly every half hour. They fly the business people that are going up in the morning. So this would be a limited thing. You'd have to book your flights out of Seattle to correspond with where you want to go, but there would be that option. And I, quite frankly, think between here and Homer, I know there's a lot of people that would love not to have to drive all the way to Anchorage, especially in the winter. So I think it's an interesting thing, and like I said, it's not going to happen overnight, but the ball is starting to roll in that direction, so I think hopefully we'll keep moving forward with it.
And if I remember correctly, right after 9/11, we did have a little checkpoint there for a while. I don't know, it didn't last very long, but I remember there was one for a short amount of time.
Yeah, I remember
Maybe
there was something like that. And like I said, with the new remodel, honestly, they didn't really change much with the remodel. I mean, they just fixed a lot of the bad, falling apart, antiquated stuff and made it look nicer inside, but didn't really change the actual layout of the airport. But
Yeah.
with this, they would have to change the actual dedicated lane, and it wouldn't be full-time TSA employees. They're not going to do it for Grant and Kenai Aviation because they're under a certain number of passengers, so they don't have to abide by the same level of TSA. Right now, yes, it meets guidelines for what they have to do. If it goes to a larger airlines, then that would be the actual security checkpoint. And who knows, man, there'd be more employees, right? There'd be more people working. I mean, even just one flight a week or one flight every other day is going to have full-time employees over there working for Alaska. So I think the expansion and the new job possibilities and what could happen for, you know, I can only imagine how much more long-term parking we would need if we had flights going to Seattle out of Kenai. I mean, it could, huge differences could be made in the city, I think. So.
Agreed. All right, additional public comments. I see nobody anywhere, so we will move along. Next meeting, July 10th. And I would remind everybody that since we'll have a student or a substitute teacher, we got to be on our best behavior and not treat him poorly. So make sure and do that. Commissioners' comments and questions. We'll start with Commissioner Costin if he's out there still.
Yeah, I'm here, so I intend to be there on the July 10th meeting.
Very good. We'll be happy to see your face again. Commissioner Barbaza.
It's good to see everybody's face tonight. And I want to thank Director Mitchell for her time and dedication to the city of Kenai. I greatly appreciate you. And I'd like to thank each of you that took the time to sign for my card with my mom's passing. It's been tough, but we're getting through it.
Commissioner Woodard.
Well, I too want to thank Director Mitchell and for treating me to the conference that we went to in, I think it was September. That was fun. I enjoyed that a lot. And I guess that's about it. Thanks.
All right. Commissioner Petty.
It was good work that we did tonight in hearing all the public comments. I appreciate all the public coming out to participate. I'd also like to thank Director Mitchell for her contributions to our fair city and also her self-initiative for creating efficiencies for our city and for planning and zoning and the educational opportunities that she has provided for us and her thorough reports that helped me as I was hearing things have a better understanding so I could make more informed decisions. So thank you, and I know that you're still going to be in the community, so you're not going away, but you just won't be here. So anyway, best of luck.
Commissioner Fikes.
Yes, I just too hope that the city of Kenai realizes the loss that they're getting. I really hope that, we've gone through this process, that they kind of sit down and ask themselves, what can they do to better attract and retain staff? Is there a reason why that, we're experiencing what we're experiencing? It's been a commissioner having to see several people change seats. I'm starting to wonder what the city is considering, so that's my 2 cents on that. But yes, I am sad to see you go. It was awesome to see you pull around the testimony of the folks with a notification and narrow it right in on the reason, the borough, and I absolutely know that because I use that borough website on a regular basis. And people do omit things for whatever reason. Maybe they wanted to go to a mailbox instead of their physical location. But that's an example of why it's not going to happen. But it's also an example of what could happen, but it can't be done today, but it can be done in the future in a code rewrite. So having that transparency and that dialogue with the public, because this may be their very first experience with that. So I think that was very professional and very courteous to take that transparency and just reflect it right back. That was awesome to have that, because that's a constant, like Commissioner Twait said, that, you know, we're always hit with, I didn't get that notice. Well, you drove by, you saw the for sale sign, you knew it was up for sale. It was a commercial property, and you saw the signs that said the city had a notification, so you didn't get a personal invite, but you did know there's a party going on. So, I mean, yeah, I kind of have to scratch my head sometimes, so thank you for that.
All right, and I think if we stay till 9:30, we get overtime, so I'm going to just talk for 2 minutes. No, I do have a question for Director Mitchell. Just back to the new planner. Have we received any applications yet, or does it look like there's help on the way? She would know, though. I would think you would know if there was.
Thank you, Chair Pro Tem. Unfortunately, I'm not in the know at all.
Oh, okay.
I just know when I emailed your commission at the last meeting, I didn't even know it was posted. Like I said, I heard through the grapevine, and then I checked. I believe the job posting is closing on July 7th or July 2nd. Other than that, I have no clue who has applied, how many, whatsoever.
Great. All right. With that, all the business complete. The meeting is adjourned.